Hello to you all. So, okay, this is just a basic. This is my attempt to just briefly cover this topic of central venous lines or central venous catheters used in the ICUs. Just general information. And I am working in a pediatric ICU, so some of the information might be related to that, but most of it applies to also all aspects of critical care and intensive care. What is a central venous line? Is just a basic question. It is just any catheter where the tip of it lies in the central circulation. That is a central venous line or central venous catheter. So we'll look at it. So it is an infusion device basically terminating in the close to the heart in one of the great vessels like aorta, if it's on the arterial side, but mostly for the practical purposes we are putting on the venous side. So tip is usually lying in the targets are superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, brachiocephalic veins, internal jugular veins, subclavian veins, and the lower body catheters, the external iliac and common femoral veins. Here we can see a Hickman catheter which has been placed into the through the subclavian vein, and when we put a subclavian center line, it is also inserted through an insertion point here and advanced over the wire into the circulation, and where tip our target is usually the cavo-atrial junction just above the entry of the superior vena cava to the right atrium. Basic indications: whenever we need a good secure IV access, whenever we want to give drugs like which we cannot give through the peripheral line, like chemotherapy, TPN, high concentrated drugs like vasoactive drugs, inotropes. These are the drugs, and when we need to give lot of fluid in a short amount of time, reliable access. Then we need, for example, lot of multiple trauma, polytrauma burns, lot of fluid resuscitation is required, extensive surgery, sepsis, septic shock, and as for blood sampling also, it is not the indication, but you can do blood sampling through it. Ideally we should have an arterial line and we should use that as an access for extracorporeal circuits, access for hemodialysis, renal replacement therapy, access for plasma exchange. None of these things can be possible without a central line. So you need a catheter, hemodialysis catheter, which is placed into the central veins. Also, we can do some other functions like monitor. We can monitor central venous pressure. We can check the central venous oxygen saturation, which is a very important tool in hemodynamic monitoring. It gives us an idea about the global oxygen demand and oxygen utilization ratio in the body. So when we do a venous blood gas, preferably from an upper body catheter, which is placed in the SVC, then we can get a good idea about the hemodynamic status also. Some other indications are chronically ill patients when we need an IV access for a long time. That is their central venous pressure monitoring for a long time can be done. Then, as I told in the previous slide, that measurement of oxygen saturation levels and blood returning to the heart. Usually, this level is around 65 to 75%. There is a 25% reserve left. Whenever it is less than 65%, 65 to 50%, that usually indicates a stress on the oxygen utilization from the body. So that means that the oxygen being delivered is not adequate for the tissue requirement. So that is there. It's a very important tool, and monitoring and access for either pre or post pulmonary artery catheter insertion. This is an old indication. Usually nowadays pulmonary artery catheters are not used that commonly in the usual, especially in the medical ICUs, even less so in the pediatric ICUs. Contraindications, as said, there is no absolute contraindication, but recurrent sepsis, hypercoagulable state, when there is a high risk of venous thromboembolism, that becomes a relative contraindication because anyway, any central venous line, there is an risk of venous thromboembolism. That is a complication, known complication associated with it, especially if the patient is immobile and is in hypercoagulable state. And whenever there is an overlying trauma to the site, when the site is inaccessible, suppose we want to put an internal jugular line, right internal jugular line, there is some trauma over the right side of the neck, there is some burns, there is cellulitis, then it is should not be used. because there will be a risk of infection and obstruction and more complications in the further course of the patient. Briefly, the types. Usually what we use in the ICUs are short-term central lines. These are the non-tunneled ones, inserted percutaneously. For long-term, we have two types of lines. One is the PICC line, the peripherally inserted central catheter, and the tunneled catheters like the Hickman and the chemoport, usually used in patients of malignancy, hemato-oncological patients, where we need a reliable access, permanent access, because they keep coming and going. They keep coming for chemotherapy and other infusions. So same thing, the locations, primary three locations are the subclavian vein, the vein, as the name says, subclavian beneath the clavicle bone, the internal jugular vein in the neck, and the femoral vein. This is the lower body catheter. And the types are tunneled catheter are the long-term catheters, the Hickman, Groshong, Goviac. Non-tunneled are the central lines that we use commonly, Arrow or Vigon, whatever may be the company that we have, central line that we have in our ICU. And there are some midline catheters which are bigger one catheters, and we do not use them a lot or rarely in any medical ICUs. Little bit about the ports. If there's a line is a single lumen line, it will be like this. A double lumen line is like this. There is a one bigger lumen and a smaller lumen. For most of the practical purposes, we use a triple lumen line where there is a larger port, which is the distal port, and there are there is a one medial and proximal ports. So these openings are staggered openings. We'll look at that in a while again. And quad lumen line again has two bigger lumens and two smaller lumens. So basically, the distal or the largest port here should be used for any blood administration, any high volume fluid administration, any colloids, FFP, albumin, drugs, and monitoring. And medial ports can be used for TP and medications, proximal port for medications, any blood sampling, drug therapy. Usually the color coding is like this for most commonly. So brown port is usually the distal one, blue is the medial one, white is the proximal one. But these openings are staggered, they do not open at the same level. We'll look at that again. This is a little bit about chemoports. Chemoports are a permanent central lines. These are implanted in the superior vena cava mostly. So these are beneath the skin. They are not externally exposed. That is an advantage. They are cosmetically appealing. There is a lower risk of infection. Whenever the child comes to you to our center, then what we do is to access this line, we pinch here and we aim our needle here at the center so that we are aiming for this part. This is the part, and there we check for backflow. Once the backflow is ascertained, when we get a good flush refill, then we flush it. And we need a special type of needle. We need this type of needle, Infusaport, Mediport, which is a non-coring line, is a hollow line. So we insert this line here at the center of that, the yellow mark, the blue mark that we saw in the previous slide. Again, to access these chemoports, we need some extra training. So usually the staff working in the chemotherapy centers are more accustomed, they are more used to it because they do it on a regular basis. Usually this is not used that much in an intensive care unit because if the child gets really sick, you need a proper triple lumen line so that you can give a lot of medications together. This is just a suggested blood collection order. So ideally you should collect blood first in the blood culture bottle, then in the blue bottle, which is the heparin, which is the citrate vial, then the red and the gold, the clotted samples, then the heparin vial, green vial, then the lavender, pink, and gray, so on. So that gives us the best laboratory results when we are sending sample from the central line. So again, as I told you about the staggered openings, so TPN and blood can be infused at the same time provided they have staggered openings. Staggered openings means that the openings are not at the same level. And the double and triple central lumens are staggered. They are at different openings. In implanted ports, PICC lines usually are single lumen lines, but if they are double lumen lines, then they will have two staggered. They will have the ports will be side by side. So central line usually has a one port will be opening here, one here, and one slightly here. Proximal, medial, distal, like this, And the PICC lines, if they have two lumens, then they will be side by side like this, and this will be this is center line. These are at different levels, so we can give TPN and blood at the same time if we want. This is a very important equation in ICU for understanding. Basically, it says that steady flow of a liquid or air in a rigid tube is directly related to fourth power of the inner radius of the tube, r to the power 4. So the higher the radius, the bigger the radius, or the bigger the lumen, or you can say, suppose we have two lines, this and this. So this is a bigger lumen. This will have a higher, faster flow than this, and is inversely related to length. So the longer the catheter, whatever center lines are like this, as compared to a cannula which is like this. So if both the radius are same, then the flow will be higher, faster in which one, this or this? It will be in this, because the length is smaller. The longer the length, the less is the flow, because the flow is inversely related to the length of the tube. So to maximize flow, an ideal infusion system, we should have a largest diameter and shortest possible length, so that we can infuse fluids very fast, and also the viscosity should be low. So this equation also applies to flow in the conducting zones of the airways, where when we have the bigger the airway, the more smoother or faster is the flow, and as the airways get narrow, the flow reduces. So it applies in the airways on the respiratory physiology also, and this is a very important basic equation in critical care. When infection control, all of us working in an ICU should be well versed with this. The risk of central lines. The biggest one complication we discussed was the venous thromboembolism. With another biggest I would say the more serious complication is infection, because it's a portal to the central circulation. So any infection can enter directly into it. Infection through the central line. There are two terms: center catheter-related bloodstream infection (CRBSI) and central line associated bloodstream infection (CLABSI). CRBSI. These two will be discussed in detail in a separate video. But anyway, we should, whenever there is an intravascular device in situ, we should always, if there is any fever, tachycardia, hypotension, then this becomes an important clue that there might be an infection there. To prove it's CRBSI, there are some criteria. We should have a quantitative paired blood cultures, or differential time to positivity if it is available in your lab. Or if there is no direct proven, then even if there is evidence of systemic infection and we have the line was there in the last 48 hours before the blood being cultured, then that is called a CLA-PSI. Prevent it, basically we need two things. While inserting, we need some precautions. These are the insertion bundles: full hand washing before procedure, chlorhexidine scrub, maximum sterile barrier precautions, insertion training. And while maintaining the line, when we are using it on a daily basis, very important thing is daily assessment for line necessity. That becomes very important. We should daily assess whether the catheter is needed. Whenever in the morning rounds and whenever all the consultants are there, we should ask the question whether we can do without the lines. So the lesser invasive devices that we have, central lines, endotracheal tube, Foley catheters, the less the risk of infection. And catheter site care, I think you all should be knowing it. But anyway, there is no need. The catheter dressing regimen. If we have used a gauze dressing, by the way, although it is not recommended, then every 2 days it should be changed, unless it's previously soiled earlier than that, dampened or loosened. And transparent dressings, clear dressings, like tegaderms, they have to be changed every 7 days, unless they are soiled, dampened or loosened before that. And we should use pre-packaged dressing change kits as far as possible. So basically that was it in this short video. Thanks a lot for listening. If you have any questions, please ask in the comment section, and Please like the video if you found it helpful. Thank you.